Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of A Little Slice of Wellness. I have with me today an amazingly inspirational person who's going to talk to us about her kind of journey through depression and how being a service to the community has been a catalyst for her own recovery. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks for having a chat with me today.
That's all right. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, so am I. I'm a little bit nervous, as I said before, and yeah, I'm trying to manage my breathing and stuff like that, mainly because you dress so nicely and I feel like I've just walked out of the street, but it's okay. And I also realize this is probably the first time that we've had a chat that didn't involve funding, grants, business, or other stuff, so
yes.
I'm kind of really looking forward to it. Now, I mean, I can probably reintroduce you, but I think people are here to hear about your story rather than hear me kind of prattle on. So would you like to introduce yourself and maybe let us know about your story?
Yep, sure. I guess my story with depression and my journey started probably about 13 years ago now. I was diagnosed with depression at the age of 27. And previous to that, I had no experience of mental illness. I didn't know anyone who had a mental illness. I didn't know what having depression meant. And I really resisted, having depression. I was on a certain path in life and I knew where I was going and what I wanted and how I was getting there. And
sounded like you were quite successful, like you kind of had things kind of planned and sorted out for yourself. Yeah.
Well, I think I was trying to get to a point where I felt successful. And so I was pushing and striving and trying to achieve, and that essentially ended up in me, getting burnt out. And then, through that process, I was, diagnosed with depression, couldn't find any support. This is a short version.
Yep.
And eventually, once I spent, a couple of years in the darkness of trying to manage my own mental health, I went looking for support and couldn't find any.
Right.
And I then eventually started, my own charity for adults specifically over the age of 25 with depression and anxiety. So a peer support group with a psychologist facilitating, a model that didn't currently exist. And that charity's been running now, for sort of 10, 12 years.
Has it been that long now?
Yes.
Wow, 10 to 12 years.
Yes, I won't tell you how old I am now. And
27 plus 10. Got that.
Yeah. The depression completely changed the trajectory of my life.
Sure.
I never thought anything like that would happen to me. I always knew that I wanted to do something good. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to leave a legacy. I just never thought it would be in mental health. I thought I'd do, work with animals or be a photojournalist and go to war-torn countries and show people what was happening in the world. I never, ever thought I would work in the mental health space. I'm really proud that the organisation, is running and providing the service that it is. And, I've been looking now over time, what else is the best use of me, and I'm looking at, writing a book and doing some other classes and things like that, because I think there's so many people in our community right now who need help.
Definitely.
And there's still a stigma and people still don't know what to do, or how to get help. So it was a massive journey for me going through, a mental illness and, how that changed my life and what's important to me and what I care about and where and how I, spend my time. I think when you go through a mental illness, it just gives you a perspective change. You just completely look at life in, a different way, which now really guides me in where and how I spend my time and what I do and with who,
Could we perhaps back up a little bit, right? Because you talked about you being diagnosed at the age of 27 with depression, but I hazard a guess that a lot of stuff happened prior to kind of that age. Were you at that point in time able to know any signs or how did you know that things weren't going well, I suppose?
Yeah. Yes, there were definitely signs and I ignored them all.
Right, okay.
Yeah, which don't do that. I don't recommend doing that. Don't try that at home. I guess leading up to that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left school. I thought I wanted to be a vet nurse, and then, my parents thought, well, you don't really need to do TE to be a vet nurse. So I thought I really want to do massage, and, maybe you couldn't make money in massage.
Oh, massage, yeah. Very different.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about like remedial massage, acupuncture and stuff like that? Okay.
So then I just settled on photography. I went and did a photography degree, and then I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't really find a niche in photography that I wanted to work in.
Yep.
So I went and lived overseas for a couple of years. I did the 2-year, UK visa, did random jobs, worked in pubs and, things like that. I ended up in a long-term relationship after that. When I came home, I went to South Africa for about 6 months. That relationship ended. Then I came back to Perth, and the last decent job I had when I was kind of in the UK and then in South Africa was in payroll. So I started working in payroll. I was working in large organisations, and I thought, this is not me. I'm not a number cruncher. I can do it, but I really prefer more interaction with people and, working with people and kind of helping people. So I made the move to go into HR, thinking I want to become a HR generalist and work my way up, in that profession. And I took a role in an organisation where they didn't have a HR person. The payroll person had gotten to capacity. They split the roles into payroll and HR, and I came in new and young and fresh and wanted to be successful and had all these ideas. And I just kind of butted heads with, the person who was in this payroll role. And then it was a very isolated role. I didn't have much interaction with other people.
And you're overseas at this point as well, right?
No, this is when I came back.
Still back here, okay. So even though you kind of had friends and kind of family around, the nature of the work was just very isolating.
Yeah, and I became increasingly, frustrated. This was, my opportunity to carve out a career and to work with people and make a difference. And I like being able to put my ideas forward and, shape things. And I found, it increasingly frustrating that I was kind of stifled, in this role. And because the role was new, there wasn't a lot of structure or anything like that. So I started to just get really tired. I started to become emotional. I started to feel sick when I got to work. What am I going to be dealing with today? And at the same time, I was also wanting to set up a business. So I'd been introduced to an online business, there's a lot of multi-level marketing, affiliate marketing sort of businesses. And I thought, this is my ticket to getting out of this life and not having to work a job for the rest of my life. So anytime I wasn't at work, which was taking more energy than, it needed to, I was working on trying to set up this business. So lunchtimes, after work, weekends, and then still trying to do all the family things and visit my elderly grandfather and, do it all.
I sound tired just listening to you doing all that stuff. Wow.
And I basically just kept pushing. I kept pushing at work to try and make it better. I kept pushing this business even though I wasn't seeing any results. I kept doing all the things that I had to do to, life admin sort of things. And even though I started to feel emotional, I didn't want to go and do, the business stuff, and I didn't have energy to go to a family engagement, and I didn't want to go to work that day. I kept going anyway. And I just pushed myself basically to a place of burnout. And I used to, I read a lot of books about emotional intelligence and being successful, and I basically rationalised every negative emotion that I had. Successful people do what needs to be done, and you're an Olympic athlete training for gold, you do things when you don't feel like it anyway, and I wasn't letting myself feel any of the emotions. I was basically just stifling them and ignoring them, and it got to a point where I couldn't ignore them any longer. My mum came over one particular Friday night. We were going out for dinner, and I was curled up on the couch crying just uncontrollably. Could not stop crying, didn't know why, there was no trigger. I couldn't articulate, what was wrong. My mum was like, somebody died? What is going on? There's just this outpouring of emotion. And I was like, I don't know. This is all I have. And when I kind of managed to calm down and, we sort of went out for dinner and...
you still managed to go out to dinner after that? Wow.
Yeah, I looked, absolutely terrible. And at that point in time, I thought, I don't give a shit. I don't care what I look like or what's going on. I just was at, zero kind of capacity. And then I had a chat with my mum and, said, I've kind of been feeling like this. And she said, all right, well, I think, maybe you need to quit your job and, come back home and live with us. and we can give you some support.
Okay.
And that was sort of the beginning of my journey. I had a family friend who had experience with mental illness, and she recommended me to see a psychologist to start putting some boundaries in place around how I was feeling and what I was going through. And I started seeing her, and that was helpful.
Was there some resistance to go and see a psychologist in the first place? Because imagine, right, this is something that you've never experienced before. I mean, crying on a couch, kind of like uncontrollably, and then you had all this stuff that kind of backed up into that.
Yep.
And I know Mom said, okay, let's go and see someone to have a chat with, right?
Yep.
But how did you manage to actually do that, and what did it kind of feel like to kind of make that first step?
Yeah, I think I didn't really know what to do. I was at a point where I was, thinking I don't actually know what to do here. I don't know how to help myself, and my family as well were like, well, we don't know really. We can't help you, in the way that you need either. And so I thought, well, I need to talk to someone. I don't want to feel like this, So if this person can at least help me. But what I thought was going to happen was that this person would help me put some boundaries in place, and I'd feel a bit better, and I could go back to my normal life and the business and the job and the thing. That's what I thought was actually going to happen. So I was also kind of willing to do that, because I just thought, I just want this thing to go away and I can get back to my normal life. So if I have to go and talk to someone, let's go and do that.
Sounds like a bit of a continuation of that kind of thinking that you had, like rationalizing it, right?
Yes.
If I do X, Y, and Z, I'm gonna be fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe take a pill.
Yes.
Things will be sweet after that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what did not happen.
Right.
The psychologist was helpful, and she became my psychologist long term, and just massively impacted my life. But we did start to put some boundaries in place. My psychologist told me I had to become an energy investment banker.
An energy investment banker?
Yeah.
Never heard that one before.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, well, what is an energy investment banker?
So basically, I couldn't do anything that wasn't going to give me a positive energy return.
Okay.
So whether I exercised or how much I slept or whether I went and caught up with a friend or not, any kind of activity I was going to do, it had to give back to me. She would say, go to the beach. I don't want you to go for a walk, along the beach or anything like that. Just sit there and watch the ocean. And I thought, you're kidding. That just sounds dumb. How is that going to help me? And she was making some suggestions to give me these kind of boundaries, and I started to do little things. But I think it was almost too late for me to start doing those things, and like my depression just got worse, my thoughts got worse, my energy got lower, and I basically ended up when I went home to live with my parents, really not being able to do anything at all. I would sleep for 12 hours a day. I would wake up tired. I had no energy. I had no inclination. I had no motivation. I didn't give a shit. Everything that I used to define myself, my business, my work, this career, where I was living, who I was spending time with, was basically taken away from me. And I felt like this shell of a person. I had nothing, I was nothing, I didn't care about anything. There was no future. It was just a really dark, difficult time.
Right. Do you reckon that was one of the darkest time, or one of the darkest times in your life?
That led to probably the darkest time of my life. Yep. When I was really, struggling with my depression and seeing my psychologist and trying to put these boundaries in place, I was trying to do, the little things. Like I was trying to regulate my sleep, and I was trying to exercise, and I was trying to manage my thoughts, and do the little things that would help me, feel better. And after months and months and months of just tiredness and lethargy and no motivation, no inclination, trying to do these little things, nothing was working, and I wasn't actually, feeling any better.
I can't imagine what that must be like, because you've done some of the things that they've asked you to. You've gone to speak to someone, you put some of these positive strategies in place, you've done all the right things, right?
Yeah.
And you'd expect that if you do that, the right things would also happen, that you'd get better. But it sounds like it got even worse in certain respects.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, it was incredibly frustrating, and it was probably the most soul-searching, difficult, confronting, frustrating process that I had ever been through. I didn't know anyone who had been through, a mental illness, and I didn't want to be one of the people anyway. I thought depression doesn't happen to people like me. I'm positive and motivated, and I know what I want, and no.
Yeah.
So I really resisted the fact that I had depression. Yet I was trying to do the steps, but I wasn't actually accepting, that I had depression. So I think not accepting it, but also, trying to do the work, I wasn't allowing myself to still really feel what I needed to feel, that then the work that I was doing, would actually benefit me. And I got to a point, after months of trying, I had a, conversation with my mum. Little things would, trigger me, and my mum would say, "How are you feeling today?" And I'd think, how the fuck do you think I'm feeling? I've just slept for 12 hours, I have no energy, I can't do anything, I don't have a job, I have nothing.
I don't know if people can see, but Amanda's face changed just then, and it literally scared the shit out of me. It was a little bit scary and took a little bit of a step back, but that's okay. Do continue. I can imagine. Like a lot of people do say that, right? Like, any little thing that someone says, a sound, like, and even if someone that was a support person, was really there to kind of help you.
Yes.
There's this kind of like a you have like a buffer against them, right? Like,
yes, and I have apologised to my mum several times over the years of the stress that we both went through. But this particular day, I was just maxed out and lashed out. And I remember walking away from mum, and I was walking down the passage, storming back to my room. I was just going to go back to sleep the day away. My mum followed me down the passage, and I still get emotional thinking about it. And she said to me, "What's wrong, love?" And I turned to her and said, "The thoughts in my head are telling me it would be easier if I wasn't here."
Oh, wow.
And that scared the shit out of me, and let alone to have the thoughts in your own mind, but to then actually have to tell that to somebody else, and to someone who loves you, and somebody who, like, all my parents wanted to do was take the pain away. And it was difficult to realise that myself, to then tell them, knowing that's just going to cause them more stress and worry and heartache, because they're already stressed out as it is trying to help me. And to then go, how do we deal with this? What do I do now? I didn't really want to die. I didn't really have any intention of ending my own life. I just wanted the pain to go away. And that was the place that my thoughts led to, thinking that that would be an answer.